Well, welcome back, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Sawyer Paddles and Oars Live. We're in the middle of July, and it's extremely hot here in Southern Oregon, and extremely hot in the paddle sport industry. You know, right now we're gonna have a discussion with Mike from Eddyline, and before we get too far into it, and before we kick it over to Mike, I want to just literally just kind of remind folks that this is pretty much prime time in the paddle sport industry. So when you are needing that gear and you're trying to get through on a phone call or really wanting someone to talk to right away, you know, just be a little patient, take some time. You know, sometimes, you know, it takes several times calling in to get through to one of our shops all around the country. And it's not because they're ignoring you. It's because that their shops are full and every phone line is fully functioning. So, you know, just be kind and patient. And, you know, everybody wants to get out there and explore what they've got to raft on and to drift boat on. And so that's our whole intention. All of our dealers the same way. So definitely we appreciate everybody supporting the local shops, and just be a little patient. And without any further ado, we're going to be talking with Mike from Eddyline, but we're going to kick it over to him for an intro, and his shop guys are actually just finishing up their day. So I'm going to let him do an intro of his shop guys, and then we'll give us an intro of Eddyline. Take it away, Mike.
So my name is Mike DeHoff. I run Eddyline Welding. And before we get into talking about a lot of the details of the business and what we do, like as Zach said, we're wrapping up our workday, and I really want to introduce the guys because this business can't be what it is without the fellas I'm about to introduce, and someone who's not here, but we'll talk about her also. So this is Alex Miller right here. Hello, everyone. He's kind of our main welder fabricator here in the shop. He does excellent work putting together frames. And then next up is, this is Levi Jamison. Levi does tons of work with all the cutting, fitting, and finish work, and he does a lot of the C-deck foaming and all the like making everything look pretty as it's going out the door. And then last, we were lucky enough to have Peter Lefebvre in the shop today too. He does a lot of the painting of dories and finishing all the little detail work of dories, doing some of the C-deck on the decks of the dories, latches, making everything look pretty and everything. And I just wanted to make sure that I give these guys public credit because they do so much for Eddyline Welding and make it really what it is. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Not here is Tanya Troxler, who is our detail person, our unscrewer-upper, to use a PG term. She handles all the details, worked with you guys, Zach and Aaron at Sawyer, to help do our orders and everything. And she's very shy for public stuff, but I will represent a little bit of her handiwork. She also does cool stuff like this, where it's a new sticker we've got, and she's quietly exceptional. So wanted to give a shout out to her too. So
excellent.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, well, as everybody knows, you know, I mean, all of us in the manufacturing end of things have such a huge need from our teams as far as, you know, all of the, you know, the sales guys get to handle all the phone calls, but, you know, it's as those things pile up, it's the folks in the shop that are really getting the job done and getting the orders out the door. And we are all very grateful to all of the shop folks all around the country because we know that makes things happen. And when people are really pressed for their deadlines, you know, it's the shop guys that stay there for that extra 15 minutes, extra half hour, finishing up what they are doing. And really that completion and follow through is very key with just having a real fine-tuned crew. And you know, that passion comes out in your end product. And it's the same thing with ourselves and other shops that we work with around the country. So absolutely, kudos to the folks out there getting it done. And I know it's not the easiest thing to do to be in a welding shop in the middle of the summer, but
in Moab, Utah, where it's hot.
In Moab, Utah.
I don't think we've had a day where it hasn't been 100 in, I don't know, a couple weeks.
Right.
But the
Yeah, around
monsoon
here in
is
the
up, so,
Pacific Northwest, they let us know when we're going to hit 100. Out there, they just let you know when it's not going to be 100, right?
exactly.
Gotcha.
So maybe to talk a little
Perfect.
bit about what we do at Eddyline Welding. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you.
Absolutely.
To talk a little bit about what we do with Eddyline Welding is we're lucky enough to have this huge concentration of people who love being out on rivers in Moab. And so much of the stuff that we do might not be my idea at all. It might be, we get people coming in who have tons of experience and also lots of ideas, and they say, have you ever tried this? And what about that? And that's kind of where things really started to grow with Eddyline Welding. And we kind of pride ourselves on trying new things all the time and not really having the attitude of we have it all figured out, because sometimes that's not any fun. And so like every year we build a new demo boat raft setup where we try new ideas, and we've started getting into the dory world and everything, and we're starting to morph different things together as far as like bringing things that are cool about dories into rafts, and bringing things that are sensible about rafts into dories, and kind of blurring the lines a little bit with that and trying new things and doing different stuff. But a lot of it comes from the people in the greater Moab and Colorado Plateau river running community who have good ideas and say, can you make me something like this? Or I saw this on a river and I want to try to change it just a little bit.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So here, I got a few pictures for you. So Shishka, let's put up that first one of the continuous curve frames and some of that stuff.
Yeah, it might take her just a minute to find that. But yeah, when she pops it up, and definitely, I mean, that's the thing is like, we've done some co-branded projects with some folks, and the fact that you can go to a shop and talk with the folks that are actually going to build the product and give your insight and do some drawings and such, and then, you know, take off for 2-3 weeks or a month or whatever and come back and be like, okay, well, this is, you know, this is kind of where it is at this stage. Is this what you're thinking? And yeah, that's very, very, very quality feedback, and where you can really make some more customization pieces.
Yeah.
So yeah, talk a little bit about these frames you've got here.
So some of the frames we're doing these days is we're starting to do continuous curve frames for the smaller Puma boats or other continuous curve boats. They're fun because as far as in an inflatable sense, they tend to drive as close as a dory does, but it's still a raft. And so to make a frame that really fits the continuous curve of the boat, it just takes a little bit more planning and everything. So it's a lot of fun to try to figure that out. That's on I think a 13.5-foot Air Puma. And then another big thing we're doing is, I didn't realize how much I would like it, but we're starting to do sea deck foamed frames instead of diamond plate side deck frames. So on a little 10.5-foot, I think it's a Mini Max over there with the deck and the hatches, and then on the big NRS 16-foot boat you see here, it's great because it's temperature neutral. It actually is grippier than diamond plate, and not quite as glary, which is good.
Oh, I got you. So it's basically a dense foam covering rather than a diamond plate.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll still put down a 1/8-inch smooth piece of aluminum on it, and then stick the sea deck to it and detail it out. And you know, our first question when we started working with it was, how durable is this stuff? And we have a square on the floor of the shop right underneath me that we stuck on the floor 2 years ago, and we throw tools at it and run the welding tables over it, and it's still hanging tough. It's pretty incredible. So, and then on this white boat,
and that definitely is something that, you know, can really, that, you know, a boater would find that very attractive, because every boater has bashed their knuckles on something in their boat.
Oh yeah.
You know, at one point or another. And so, you know, to soften a lot of those edges is very key. You know, I mean, some of the bigger accidents that happen on the river have to do with, you know, just firm, sharp objects that bodies get hurled into, you know? And so, yeah, padding up the entire cockpit makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's really nice. And you can see on this white boat, this is where we're getting into using some of the stuff that we've learned doing dories and converting it into rafts, where these two boxes, we call them split boxes. We're starting to play around with a lot more profiling and different sizes of boxes, but that's a way to make it so that you don't have to carry one big dry box. You could do two small dry boxes and organize your stuff better, and using push button dory latches on those, and you know, just trying new and different things.
Right. And that actually really does help, you know, kind of utilize your space, because, you know, the big dry box that is maybe pretty full at the beginning, but as it gets empty, then you're constantly just rifling through it, trying to find the stuff that you're wanting to pull out, because it's like it's all kind of settled to the bottom. So definitely, you know, if you're using the same amount of space and breaking it down into two boxes, you know, would definitely be helpful. Makes a lot of sense. I've noticed there's more and more dry box options now with that same kind of concept of breaking them down to where you're literally putting two where you would be putting one. So you're still taking up the same amount of space, but it's a little easier to organize. So yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense.
And I find kitchen boxes, you gotta haul them across the beach. They're not getting any lighter. And so carrying two medium weight boxes versus one coffin is kind of nice.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's you know, I think every commercial outfit always has a backbreaker box that, like, everybody knows it in the crew. It's just kind of like, oh, I've already loaded that once this trip. I don't know if I need to. I need to load it again. But before we get too far into some other products, Mike, what's kind of what brought you into this world, as far as what brought you into the Eddyline company? I know that you so you're welding a lot of different boats and frames and such, but did you come from a commercial boating background, or what's your background as far as the heartbeat of Eddyline Welding?
Well, so I started running rivers when I was 19, commercially, mainly over in Colorado. I grew up a lot. I was born in Salt Lake, grew up a lot in Golden, Colorado, and Lakewood, in that area. And I started working on rivers over there, and then started doing multi-day trips, worked for a company doing multi-day trips for a long time. And then that was with Outward Bound. And I actually started doing administrative stuff, permit management, what have you. Did that for a long time, and then needed to do something different. And I worked for Texas Riverways for quite a bit, running their jet boats up and down the Colorado River, picking up canoers and what have you. Kind of parallel to that, a really good friend of mine, Steve Young, T-Berry, who is, he works for Canyonlands National Park here. He's now the chief ranger. Back a long time ago, before he started doing that, he was doing a welding fabrication business and made a lot of frames for people around here. And in my off times in the winter, I'd always help him out, just because I'm a type of guy who likes something to do and stay occupied.
Oh, I gotcha.
And it got to a point where T-Berry had kids, and he got more and more responsibility, worked for the Park Service. He's good at what he does. And he kind of was like, I can't do it anymore. Maybe you should do it. So when I was working at Texas Riverways, we had an off season that was 3.5 months long. So I started doing more stuff there and having projects in the wintertime, and it just it blew up. And now here we are doing stuff, talking about all the different things you could do when you make metal stick together and want to take it down the river.
Got it. Nice. Oh yeah. You know, I mean, absolutely. That's like, that's one of those things where, you know, a lot of, like, Sawyer's always been known as folks that sell stuff, but you use our own stuff. You know, I mean, like, everybody is like, you deal with Aaron a lot, and, you know, I mean, he has over 25 years of commercial guiding, and Derek, our other main sales guy, and myself, you know, we've all been in that outfitting world. And so it is definitely something about, you know, just that whole the whole passion of being able to talk about your product because you use it all, and you're not, that you're not just looking at something as far as, specs on it. It's basically, well, the last time I used this, this is
Yeah.
what this is how it was. But
Yeah.
but yeah, that's definitely, and that probably leads to a lot of your innovation, because you've seen applications differently, and it's kind of like, well, what if we tweak this a little bit and change this, change that, and all of a sudden you come out with something that is very unique to the boating experience, for sure. So
Yeah.
excellent. Very
Sometimes
cool.
it's just about making my boating experience easier and better, and then those ideas spill over to be able to give customers good stuff too.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, a lot of products have kind of come out of the R&D of a cocktail napkin, and it's kind of like, what if this was actually changed this way?
Yeah,
And that goes right back to that, the small shop being able to actually make those modifications.
Yeah.
So let's talk. A while back, maybe it's a few months back now, we had Andy Hutchinson on, and we were talking about Grand Canyon dories, and he kind of talked about how kind of the roots of what he was doing kind of came from the Rogue River, and kind of tied that into Jerry Briggs and the Rogue River Specials here locally. And literally your name was mentioned, because we were talking about, he's building boats out of wood, and we were talking about, who's making them out of aluminum, and so your name came up, and so let's just dive into that a little bit, and talk about just what you are doing in the dory boat manufacturing. And
Sure.
before we get too far into that, want to remind folks this is live, and so if you do have any questions or comments, please feed that in. Leave us a comment or a question, and we'll either get to it, or we do have folks monitoring that as well, and we'll answer any of your questions as we go through here. But definitely fire in your questions to us, and we'd be more than happy to talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the dories that you're building, and
Sure.
current
Well,
projects and new ones coming.
So to hook Andy in a little bit, we started off someone approached us and said, hey, would you guys like to try building a few dories? And I thought to myself, it's just like a curved dry box. How hard could it be? And it turned out that it's incredibly hard. There's so much detail that goes into dories, especially when you make a good one. And we have had our trials and tribulations about it in a big way. When I first was able to go over to Andy Hutchinson's shop, I'm someone who I like to garner as much information from a person who's got a lot of experience in things. So I was asking Andy things about the different dories he was building, and I asked the question to him, so what do you think the next big evolution is in dories? What do you think, which direction is it gonna go? And Andy turned and looked at me, he's like, well, you're just gonna have to go figure that out, aren't you? And so from there, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. I find myself so lucky to be able to work with Andy and Brad Demick and a lot of the other very experienced dory people here in Moab, like input from people like Bayo Gerhardt and Dave Bodner. T-Berry's helped with some of that stuff. Pete, who you met earlier, runs dories commercially down in the Grand, and he gives incredible input into some of the designs we do. And so, what you're seeing here on your screen, this is the first boat that we designed from the ground up, kind of really trying to make a boat that was going to be more of an upper basin boat, upper basin of the Colorado River, or something that would be able to be run on the San Juan, the Yampa, the Green through Desolation, through Cataract Canyon. We don't have as reliable water levels as they do down in the Grand Canyon. So I wanted something that was tough and you could take on trips of all different water levels. And so what you're looking at is what we call the Chub. And we called it this because I sent the initial table of offsets that give all the different numbers to Brad Demick, and he ended up lofting this thing up and he termed it the Chubby Bunny because it being a little wider so that it didn't have, it's fatter than your normal Briggs boat, but that way it's got more displacement and it doesn't draw as much water, so that hopefully you could avoid the rocks a little bit more.
Right.
When we unrolled that in the shop, Bago Gerhardt was in the shop, and he said, "You can't name a boat after a mouthful of food." After we explained to him, Chubby Bunny was when you stuff lots of marshmallows in your face and try to say the words. And so Bago then termed it the Chub. It's got to be called the Chub. That's just a better thing. And that name kind of stuck. But it is kind of a fatter boat. It's got a 50-inch bottom, 50.5-inch bottom versus the 48-inch bottoms, or even skinnier that you see on some of the other drift boats.
Right. Oh yeah, and definitely some of the real sporty McKinsey boats are that 48-inch bottom.
Yeah.
And
so
that makes a lot of
one
sense.
Is 1310 was the first one, which is the one that you could see all the sea deck on the deck up top there, and it's down in the corner. That's the blue and white one. And then we tried and tweaked a few different things. And the one that we're just finishing up now, that's kind of in the lower right corner here, that's what we're calling the Chub 2.0. And we really took a lot of the first Chub. We had a great water year last year, and we encouraged all the people that give us really good ideas to take this boat out and row it and tell us what they think. And so we took all that information and put it all together and thought through what were the good things, what's the R&D we're getting out of it, and that goes into the second Chub that you're seeing there. So that's kind of been the fun evolution of the Chub.
Gotcha, nice.
We're working on modeling up. So if this is the Chub, the first model we put together for that, we're just finishing up the next version of what we're calling the Goldilocks. And why that is because Brad Demick built a boat called the Bear's Ears, which was a big 18-foot boat. And he took a lot of the Rogue River Specials. And Brad has so much experience building boats that he can think about how to ratio things and change it, but still have kind of that classic Briggs stuff to it. And what we find a little bit is the Chub, for some things, for some people, is too small. And the Bear's Ears, for some things, for some people, is too big. So hence trying to get the Goldilocks going here.
Gotcha.
So it's coming together. We're probably going to build at least 2, if not 4, this coming winter. We've got a few customers that might want to place orders for them starting the 1st of September.
Right. Wow. Yeah, definitely. You know, I mean, it's amazing. Like we were talking a little bit with Andy about, you know, I mean, I was pretty amazed at just the descendants of the Jerry Briggs crew that would still run those Rogue River Specials down through the Rogue Canyon. And to me, they just seem like they're just too big for what that type of boating is. But the whole concept of it was that the guys that ran them just loved them. And you know, you would look at your boat and like having like a 1654, and you would be sitting next to a Rogue River Special, and your boat would look like it's just full of gear, and the Rogue River Special would have the same amount of gear in it, and it would look empty. And you're like, huh. But just the way that those performed and the way that they tracked was still to this day. I mean, there's people in the Rogue Canyon here that's all they will run is a Rogue River Special.
You know? Yeah.
So it's definitely it was really very interesting for me to just kind of hear that change from the lineage of Jerry Briggs out to the Grand Canyon Dories, and to listen to Andy talk about it is really kind of reminds you just how small the boating world really is. You know, like you have such a gathering of dory folks in your immediate area.
Yeah.
But you know, more than likely they all know of Jerry Briggs, and they all know of the folks on the Middle Fork that are, you know, making wooden drift boats and running middle of the salmon in drift boats, you know. And so it's really all those little niches just kind of bleed together. And And I think it's really pretty unique to the industry overall, for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
And then, so let's talk a little bit about some of your projects. I noticed how you were talking about how you're kind of leading, trying to take the drift boat or the dory element into the raft side,
Sure.
and vice versa. Besides the curvature frame on the boats we looked at earlier, what other concepts have you toyed with as far as trying to bridge those elements? Because definitely, like around here, people move to an inflatable. A lot of them call them inflatable drift boats, which us in the industry just call it a raft with a fishing frame on it.
Sure.
But it's one of those things where they move to that because they're hitting a lot of rocks. They're banging into a lot of things, and people do understand that you can miss the rocks with maneuverability, but I think it's like, as folks want that expanded ability to use it as just a whitewater raft or use it as a fishing craft.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of where it comes from.
Yeah.
But have you toyed with different frame configurations in the boats, as far as setting them up for angling as well, or just different characteristics of the dory in the frames for the rafts?
Well, down here, when people call, we don't really build much in terms of fishing frames, because the fishing down here kind of stinks. We got muddy water, and so we go run rivers and enjoy canyons, and that's just what we do. The things that we're doing a lot is bringing more shade into dories, and then making life on a raft easier. Like right now, I'm going to see if I could raise this up and give you a little bit of a view. I'm building this year's demo boat, and one of the things that I'm doing is I'm tired of loading the boat and having the rear bar and the bimini, when it folds down, not line up. It makes it harder to load. And so I did what I'm calling a bimini back bar, where that bump out to the back is going to be right where the bimini lays down, which will make it easier to load everything together. So that's kind of this year's concept for that. And again, this boat up front here is going to have split boxes. I think I'm getting them in there. So
gotcha.
Those boxes will be there, and that's more the dory thing, and really trying to make it so there are less and less gaps. And so you just throw stuff in and kind of close your hatches and try to do less rigging of everything together, but still you have your compartmentalization of things where you can. So that's some stuff
right.
toying with.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the dory latches on dry box is absolutely a concept that many rafters would appreciate if they actually just were able to actually see it and touch it, feel it, kick it, because that makes a big difference. And then it also it puts your latch actually subdeck versus it being external.
Yeah.
Where so that's very nice. And that's definitely an element that a dory boater would identify with.
Yeah.
And the rafters would definitely enjoy that feature, but you don't see that much. So that's definitely something that is very unique to your operation, which is that's a great find, for sure.
It's fun. And to your point of it, you always get thrown and hit something. When you use dory style latches, you can make things lower profile. And so you have more of a lower deck profile, which I'm always one who likes to rig things low and make it so that you don't have, the jumble of Jed Clampett stuff everywhere. You could sort of just make it neat. So,
absolutely. Yeah, streamlining a lot of that is very key, and that ties right into a decked dory is all about and you see them on the water, they just look so clean and tight because everything is just packaged down in the decks and everything's shut down, and it's like there's not anything on there and they're completely fully loaded, so that's very key. Now I know you're down in the down in the Moab area. And, you know, like a lot of the dory folks run our smoker drifters. And, you know, there's definitely dory folks that have a very ideal tune spec. I mean, Brad, I think, has his own spec that we build for him. And some of the other guides have this spec that we build for them. And it's all just a little variation, but definitely the solid ash oars definitely seem to still be kind of strong in that neck of the woods. But but you guys have been able to actually kind of branch out in our line a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I know you guys are you're carrying some MX stuff and some smokers, and and so is that just kind of are you just kind of seeing how your demographic is growing and branching into the different models?
We do a lot with just what the customer wants to have on their boat. And we experiment around a lot with different types of oars as they work with different setups. You know, as you know, it's such a big, personal preference, but then figuring out your own rowing geometry takes so long. Oh, yeah. And we've been using a lot of the square tops. We've been using a lot of the MXS and MXL things. We find that once you get over 10 feet, going for your slightly bigger oar shaft and getting the strength, because a lot of the wider you build the decks of your raft frame, if you're going to talk about that, the longer your oar needs to be, because your oar towers are going further out. So like a lot of the 16-foot setups we're building these days row with a 10.5-foot oar. And that's a lot of oar to have out there. So I would love to hear from you guys the story about the Canyon oar lock you just came out with, because Levi, who you just met, so he does a lot of oar reverberation. He even makes his own oars some and everything, but he does a lot of just re-wrapping oars and helping people get the most out of their wooden oars. And he just rode with them, and he said they're great. He thinks that they're better than your Cobras.
Well, you know, we have to, in full disclosure, it was basically a project that came to us from one of the outfitters down in your area, and Pro River Outfitters there, who does all the outfitting for Grand Canyon trips. They approached us, and they were asking for an oar lock that used to be made here in the Southern Oregon area, but wasn't really in existence anymore. And it was kind of what our standard A-lock is, but it had big bulbous horns, and so Bruce at Pro really liked that more bulbous horns, and so we kind of went back and forth with them about, you know, how the Cobra, the wide horns of the Cobra, is something that we feel is really an incredible benefit to just spreading out the load on any oar setup that you're rowing. But Bruce had different ideas as far as what he liked that element, but he really wanted this bulbous part to it. And so the Canyon lock literally is something that is a project that Bruce did all the work on. We just allowed, we shared our foundry with Bruce, and pretty much talked it out, and he wanted to produce this model. And when we saw it, we were kind of like, well, that has very similar components to the Cobra, very similar components to an A-lock, because it doesn't have the deep channel like the Cobra has. And then that big bulbous end is really from that whole thing of safety in the boat, like we were talking about. It's like, you know, Bruce didn't really want to have an oar lock that came to a point. Both the Cobra and our regular A-lock kind of come to a little bit more of a point, not a sharp point, but more
not
pointed.
too much. I got one right
here.
Yeah,
exactly. So he wanted to kind of run with this, and you know, we basically just kind of talked to him about, you know, this is what we do, this is the materials we use. And so it was over a couple of years of him working with the foundry, and we weren't really sure it was even gonna go anywhere. And then basically our foundry showed up, and it was kind of going into the Christmas holiday season. And he's like, hey, you know, we we have this oar lock done from Pro, and but they're fully raw, so they need to be machined and tuned to spec, and so they can be a finished product. And so we talked with Bruce a little bit about it, and he's like, yeah, absolutely, I have made all the locks that I want, and I don't want to have anything to do with it anymore. He's like, I have the exact lock I want, are you guys interested? And so we're like, well, ship us the locks. We'll definitely machine them for you, because, we definitely want you to be able to use them, because the guys that at the foundry that pour, they don't, machining is not their thing. I mean, it's literally, it's a foundry, I mean, they're melting stuff down and pouring molds, and, it's fully old school. You go there, and they're plowing stuff around with a bobcat and a bunch of dirt so it can cool, so they can pull it out of there and grind it and tumble it. I mean, it's like, the area where you go into a foundry is just like, it's almost like you're walking back in time. And so we basically came to this agreement that, they're all forged out of the same material. It's all forged out of Mag 70. So a Cobra, a Canyon, and an A-Lock all have the same material, which is very, very important, because that's the most pliable to strength that we were able to find.
Yeah.
And through time with Bruce, he just kind of said, if you guys are interested in it, here's what I've got done. I would love you to actually offer it to folks, but I don't want to have anything to do with it. And we're like, okay, so we want to, we need to name it. And of course he wanted to call it the Pro Lock, but there is actually a Pro Lock already. Huh. And so we kind of broke his heart with that, and we said, we're like, Bruce, it can't be called a Pro Lock, because that's a competitor of ours that actually makes a Pro Lock. So we were like, we wanted to have very, very wide range appeal, and we were kind of like, what's on every river? A canyon. Huh. So basically we were like, you designed these for your usage in the Grand Canyon. We will use them on the Rogue Canyon and river canyons all around the country. So that's kind of where it came about. And yeah, so we're slowly rolling them out. More and more people are getting used to seeing them and starting to ask for them. And it's just one of those things, is that it's one of those COVID era new products, right? Because it's like, now there's no gathering where we all get together and this large number of people get to see your new stuff. And so these literally came out, the first run of them that we had ready to go for sale was like in February. And then, we basically, we showed them to a couple folks that, when we still had folks traveling around, but then everything hit. And so we had slowly but surely people are getting to see them, but like, we don't even have them, out in a lot of our dealers, because they don't know what they are. They have not seen them. They haven't actually, even just like the fact that kind of the trade show element is almost something that's just going to be non-existent nowadays. I mean, it's, definitely for the immediate time, but the fact that this is really how we see each other, right? And then, I mean, it's really like, we're looking at, 2021, which will have the Canyon lock in it, is kind of like that release of everything new for 2021 is going to take several months, because basically there's not any kind of, one event where people come and get to, see a lot of new product. And so, so it's actually, it's something that is completely brand new. And, only a few folks have had them out and tried them out. We've given them to a few local guides around here. And yeah, I mean, absolutely. The feedback has been great. People love them. And so when Bruce first had us spin up his batch, he had some different things he wanted to do with the shank. And so that's why the long shank was designed. And we first released him just exactly how he wanted his first order. And within like 3 weeks, somebody requested to have them threaded. And
Yeah.
we're like, oh, well, of course, it's a 5-inch shank. We might as well thread it.
Yeah.
So lo and behold, that just kind of came about, and yeah, it's just kind of like we're just slowly building that buzz around it, but it's something that's going to take so long. Like, I don't think people will really even know about it much until they actually, start seeing them on the river, because, it's just one of those things is that, to get a lot of shops, unlike your own, but shops they won't try something small or different. They basically want to stick to what they've got. And right now, I mean, so many shops are just overwhelmed because they're just trying to get the product out to their customers. And, I mean, it's one of those things that, probably in the fall will be more buzz about it. And, we'll probably be doing more and more of these, and sharing the Canyon versus the Cobra. But, I mean, we fully love the fact that it has the wide horns, just like the Cobra, because definitely, as far as we're concerned, if you're gonna row with an oarlock, it might as well have wide horns to dissipate the energy that you're putting on those things, because, broken oars definitely have a common denominator, and it typically is not a wide shouldered oarlock. So,
Levi, who you met earlier, he and Alex took the dory that we're finishing right now out for a final spin before we did the paint job for it. And they had one of these in one of the slots, and then they had Cobras in another slot. And they had leather wrapped oars and rope wrapped oars and compared them. And Levi thinks about rowing geometry and oars and everything like 5 times more than anybody else I know, and you impressed the heck out of him. So good job.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And there are definitely, we know that there are people that, as much as they like a lot of the concept of the Cobra, for some reason or another, for the way they row, they don't want the deep chamber of a Cobra. They want more of the cradled, more traditional cradled shoulder of the standard, like A-lock, or pretty much what oarlocks really have been for forever. And so when it kind of came out, like when we first saw it, it was kind of like, oh, that's what would happen if you if you bred a Cobra and an A-lock together and then gave it some nubby horns.
Yep.
And and it does have a bit more mass. I mean, you can see like down in the base of it, it's definitely much thicker.
Yeah, it's got
I think it's
blocky part.
Yeah, that's definitely, just to have that little extra lift on it. And there's a lot of Mag 70 brass in that thing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, they tune up just like a Cobra. I mean, just like a Cobra, you can splay that thing wide open and just tap it back into shape. And so yeah, I think that as more and more people see them, I think they will definitely become a more continuous piece of the whole line. But right now, it's really just I mean, I think Bruce has them outfitted on all of his boats. So anybody that goes and has a boat outfitted by Pro, they're gonna get them and be like, and so they'll definitely be seeing those. And then I think he did actually do a bit of he felt that he really wanted to design that for the outfitter in mind. So I think he actually sent out gift packages to a lot of outfitters. And so that's how initially people found out about him. And I think it was kind of like, here's a couple pair, or a pair for you to put on your boat. If you want to buy some, talk to Sawyer.
Yeah. It'd be cool is to do a little video about tuning these and tuning the Cobras, because we get that question a lot from people. We try to explain it, or we will tune them for it, but to see you guys who are the experts with it say, well, here's how we do it, and these are tips, and do it on the shore of the river with what you normally have when you're 4 days in on your trip or something. I think that'd be
right. Absolutely.
That's actually on our to-do list. I do have a question from Facebook. Somebody wants to know how much the Chub weighs.
Oh, good question. 460 pounds.
All right.
Fully decked and fully empty, 460
Fully
pounds.
decked, fully empty, 460 pounds. Yeah.
Excellent.
Like a big one, like the Bears Ears, those boats were 17 feet, I think 8 or 10 inches. They weighed about 680. And actually, all the different boats that come through the shop, we like to weigh them. And on the door of the shop in here, we've got a running ledger of what boat and how much it weighs and everything. We've even started, as we do work on some of the aluminum hull sport boats that come through, we've been weighing those and everything. It's just kind of fun to figure it all out.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, Mike, I think we're gonna wrap things up here.
Okay.
We definitely have rolled right through about 45 minutes, so I definitely appreciate you taking the time for us there. And before we let people go, Shiska is going to put up your contact info for your shop. So a lot of this is we want people that are either traveling through or in the Moab area that we definitely want them to be getting their next raft frame from you or their dory from you. And definitely want folks to check out Eddyline Boats and Eddyline Welding. And we're really happy to have you on and with our dealer base. And we want to tell everybody out there that definitely get out and explore your backyard. A lot of folks are getting out on adventures with who they live with. And if you get a chance and you're in the Moab area, then check out Eddyline Boats. And we just want to remind everybody, please be kind, be patient, get out on the water, and we'll see you next time on the water. Thank you much.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it.